My hand hovers over the brass doorknob. Cold, metal, smooth from decades of palms pushing through. I should knock. I should announce myself like a proper daughter returning home at 9:47 on a Tuesday night. But I hear laughter inside the drawing room. The expensive kind. The kind that comes after the third pour of scotch that costs more per bottle than most people's mortgage payments. My father's voice cuts through first. Rich, confident. The voice he uses when he's about to close a deal or ruin someone's life. Sometimes both at once. Another round, gentlemen? Glass clinks. Ice rattles. Sloane's laugh follows, sharp and bright. I know that laugh. She saves it for moments when someone's about to get destroyed and doesn't know it yet. I've heard it directed at opposing counsel, at nurses who displease her, at me when I was 19 and stupid enough to think my computer science degree impressed anyone in this family. I should walk away. Drive back to my anonymous apartment with its second-hand furniture and working locks that keep out everyone, including the people who share my last name. But then I hear it. 3 words that root my feet to the Persian runner beneath them. Rosewood Cottage sale. My grandmother's house. The only place in my entire childhood where someone looked at me and saw something other than a disappointment in a cardigan. I lean closer. The door is old. The seal imperfect. Sound travels. 20 million. My father's voice carries the weight of confession. Bad cases. Thought I could win them. Gambled wrong. Bryce Sterling speaks next. My ex-boyfriend. The one who told me I was brilliant right before he told me I wasn't wife material. His voice has that oily quality investment bankers cultivate. Smooth and slick and utterly without friction. The cottage appraises at $850,000. Quick sale, clean paperwork. My commission is 8%. $160,000 for me. Enough to cover your immediate obligations. And Meredith never has to know the extent of the problem. Sloane laughs again. She won't ask questions. She never does. Just signs whatever you put in front of her and smiles like a grateful puppy. My chest tightens. Not with surprise. With recognition. I could fix this. Right now. I could open this door, walk in, and offer to write a check. $20 million is nothing. Less than nothing. Aether Systems cleared $40 million in revenue last quarter alone, and the IPO opens tomorrow morning at a projected $84 per share. But I don't move. Because my father is still talking. Don't worry about her. She's too stupid to read the fine print. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her just to get a pat on the head. The words land like a fist to the sternum. Not a slap. A punch. The kind that knocks the air from your lungs and leaves you gasping. Stupid. She's been playing with computers for years. Sloane's voice drips with contempt. Still no real job. Still living in that sad little apartment. I posted a throwback photo of her last week, remember? From when she was 19? The comments were brutal. Everyone asking when she'll grow up and get a real career. At least the cottage sale is clean. Bryce again. Always Bryce, calculating his angle. She won't even understand what she's signing. Just tell her it's trust fund paperwork. She'll believe anything. My hand drops from the doorknob. 3 years ago, I paid off Sloane's credit card debt. $50,000 in charges for handbags and spa, weekends and bottles of wine that cost more than some people's cars. I did it anonymously through a shell company, because I knew if she discovered I had money, she'd never stop asking for more. I thought I was protecting her. Protecting all of them. Silent protector. That's what my therapist called it before I stopped going to therapy because sitting in an office talking about my feelings felt like admitting defeat. I protect people who don't protect me back. I sacrifice for people who see sacrifice as weakness. My grandmother knew. She tried to tell me, sitting in the kitchen at Rosewood Cottage when I was 16, teaching me to code on her ancient desktop computer that took 5 minutes to boot up. You're worth more than their approval, Mary. I didn't believe her then. I wanted to, but I didn't. Now, standing in this hallway, with my family's laughter echoing through the door, I feel something shift. Something cold and clean and sharp. They don't misunderstand me. They despise my intelligence because it threatens their control. I turn. My footsteps make no sound on the runner as I walk back down the hallway, through the foyer, out the front door. Kalen stands beside my car, his posture military straight despite the late hour. He's been my head of security for 3 years, knows exactly who I am and what I'm worth, never told a soul. He opens the back door without a word. I slide into the leather seat. The door closes with a solid thunk that sounds like a vault ceiling. Get me the audit logs for Scott and Partners, I say. My voice sounds different. Lower. Colder. Tonight. Kaylin's eyes meet mine in the rearview mirror. For 3 years, I've been the polite boss who says please and thank you, and apologizes when I ask him to work late. He sees something different now. Yes, boss. The engine starts. We pull away from the estate, from the people inside who think I'm too stupid to read fine print, too weak to understand what they're doing to me. They're wrong. And in 24 hours, they're going to realize exactly how wrong they've been. The Four Seasons suite costs $8,000 a night. I'm not staying here for the thread count. I'm here because the walls are soundproof, the internet connection runs on dedicated fiber, and nobody from my family would ever think to look for me in a hotel that requires a black card just to book a room. It's 2:30 inches the morning. 3 monitors glow blue across the mahogany desk, each one displaying a different layer of Scott and Partners' financial infrastructure. My fingers move across the keyboard without conscious thought, muscle memory, from 10,000 hours of coding, translating into commands that peel back every transaction, every wire transfer, every desperate attempt my father made to cover his losses. Aether Systems provides cybersecurity to his firm, has for 2 years. He doesn't know that. Doesn't know that every email, every financial record, every panicked message to his accountant flows through servers I control. He called me stupid. I pull up the first document. A case file from 18 months ago. Richard Scott, representing a pharmaceutical company against a class action lawsuit. The opposing counsel had documentation, witnesses, momentum. My father bet $6 million on a settlement that never came. Lost everything. Next file. Another gamble. Another loss. The pattern emerges like a fracture spreading across glass. $20 million. Gone. Not stolen. Not embezzled. Just arrogant, reckless decisions, made by a man who believed his charm could override facts. I open Sloane's financial records next. Her surgeon salary is substantial. $280,000 a year. Should be enough for anyone. Except she spends $580,000 annually. Designer clothes. Luxury vacations. A wine collection that costs more per bottle than I paid for my first car. She's been bleeding money for years, using credit cards like they're somehow disconnected from reality, from consequence. I find the email thread buried in her personal account. Subject line, "The Mary Problem." My stomach clenches, but I open it anyway. Sloane to Richard, 3 months ago. We need to activate the family ATM before she figures out she has options. Richard's response, "She won't figure it out. She's too busy playing with computers." Sloane again. "The cottage is the play. Sentimental value. She'll do anything to keep it. We frame it as helping her. Take what we need. Move on." 3 months. They've been planning this for 3 months. I screenshot everything. Every email. Every transaction. Every lie they told themselves about who I am and what I'm worth. My phone buzzes at 3:15. Preston Vance. The only person outside my security team who knows the truth. "You should be sleeping," I say. "So should you." His voice carries that particular strain of someone who's spent the last 48 hours preparing for the biggest financial event of his career. The Ether IPO is tracking to break records. Less than 24 hours until bell. I know. Do you? He pauses. I hear him moving, probably pacing his office. Preston doesn't sit still when money is on the line. Because if you don't legally sever your finances before market open, their debt becomes your liability. California family law is not your friend here. The words hit like cold water. I knew this. Somewhere in my brain, I knew this. But hearing it stated plainly, hearing the timeline compressed into hours instead of abstract future consequences, makes it real. How bad? I ask. $20 million in debt against $2.8 billion in assets? The creditors will come for you the second your net worth goes public. They'll argue familial responsibility, shared household history. You'll spend years in litigation, even if you win. I close my eyes. The monitors paint blue shadows across my eyelids. Save them or save your empire, Preston says. You don't get both. I've been saving them my whole life. Anonymous payments, quiet fixes, problems that disappeared before they knew problems existed. and they still see me as stupid. I need a quitclaim deed, I say, for Rosewood Cottage. That's not enough. You need a full financial separation waiver. Every future claim, every potential liability. Can you bury it in the language? Page 7, paragraph 3. Make it look like standard charity paperwork. Preston goes quiet. When he speaks again, his voice has changed. That's scorched earth. That's survival. They'll sign it without reading. You know they will. I'm counting on it. Another pause. Longer this time. I can almost hear him weighing the ethics against the necessity, the familial obligation against the cold mathematics of wealth preservation, the friends and family IPO allocations. He says finally, if you include the waiver, they forfeit everything. How much? 1.5 million shares at projected opening. If we hit $84 per share, that's $126 million. If the stock performs the way I think it will. He trails off. I do the math instantly. If the stock quadruples like similar IPOs have, if Ether Systems proves what I know it can prove, the forfeiture becomes $500 million. They wanted to steal my grandmother's house for $850,000. I'm about to let them sign away $500 million. Draft it, I say. Have it ready by noon. Meredith. Preston's voice softens. He almost never uses my full name. Are you sure? I look at the monitors. At the evidence of their contempt displayed in financial transactions and casual cruelty. At the email where Sloan called me an ATM they haven't activated yet. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. We end the call. The suite falls silent except for the quiet hum of electronics and my own breathing. Kalen knocks once, enters without waiting for permission. He's carrying a black folder, the kind lawyers use for documents that matter. The deed? I ask. Drafted, reviewed, notarized, and ready for signature. He sets it on the desk. They don't deserve you, boss. But I look up at him. Kalen never editorializes, never offers opinions. He provides security, maintains silence, executes orders without question. No, I say. They don't. He nods once, turns to leave. Kalen? He stops. Thank you. Just doing my job, boss. But we both know that's not true. His job is protecting my body. What he's actually protecting is something else entirely. After he leaves, I open the black folder. The quitclaim deed sits on top, official and innocuous. Underneath, buried in dense legal language exactly where I specified, the waiver clause waits like a landmine. They think I'm too stupid to read fine print. They're about to learn exactly how wrong they are. The Instagram notification hits my phone at 8:04 a.m. I'm sitting in my car outside a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment, engine idling, watching steam rise from a paper cup I haven't touched. The screen lights up with Sloan's post. It's a photo of me at 19. Unwashed hair pulled into a messy ponytail, oversized hoodie swallowing my frame, hunched over a laptop in the corner of the campus library. Dark circles under my eyes like bruises. I remember that night. 72 hours into a coding marathon, living on vending machine coffee and the kind of obsessive focus that makes you forget meals exist. The caption reads, TBT, to little sis's lost years tinkering with code. Some of us grew up, family love, priorities. 847 likes already. I scroll through the comments, each one a small knife sliding between ribs. When will she get a real job? Such a disappointment to the family. Richard and Sloan turned out so successful. What happened to this one? My Aunt Margaret, always quick to perform concern, praying for her to find her path. Cousin David, who borrowed $5,000 from me 2 years ago and never paid it back. Maybe it's time for an intervention? 200 comments, all of them seeing exactly what Sloan wanted them to see. The failure, the embarrassment, the family burden who never grew up. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat. My coffee has gone cold. They're softening me up, making sure I'm wounded and desperate when I walk into that library at 3 o'clock. Making sure I'm grateful for whatever scraps they offer. Even if those scraps are my own grandmother's house, the cruelty is precise. Surgical. Sloan learned it in medical school, probably. How to cut exactly deep enough to cause maximum pain without quite killing the patient. I drive to Rosewood Cottage alone. The gate is unlocked. It always is. My grandmother never believed in keeping people out, which is probably why she left the house to me instead of to my father, who would have installed security systems and cameras and motion sensors that would make Fort Knox jealous. The gravel driveway crunches under my tires. I park in the same spot I always do, beneath the oak tree my grandmother planted when she was 23 and newly married, back when the world was smaller and promises still meant something. The house looks tired. White paint peeling near the roofline. Shutters that need replacing. The front steps sag slightly in the middle from decades of footsteps. But the bones are good. Solid. The kind of construction they don't do anymore, when people built things to last instead of building them to sell. I let myself in with the key I've carried for 8 years. The one my grandmother pressed into my palm the summer before she died, closing my fingers around the brass teeth like she was passing on something more valuable than metal. This is yours, Mary. Not your father's. Not Sloane's. Yours. Don't forget that. I didn't understand then. I thought she meant the key. Now I know she meant the belonging. Inside, the air smells like dust and old wood and the ghost of her lavender perfume. I run my hand along the banister, feeling the grain beneath my palm. Smooth in some places, rough in others. Honest wear from honest use. Her needlepoint still hangs in the hallway. A quote from Virginia Woolf. A woman must have money and a room of her own. She stitched that when she was 67. After my grandfather died and left her financially independent for the first time in her life, she hung it in the entryway like a declaration of war against anyone who thought widows should be grateful and quiet. I walk through the room slowly. Kitchen with its yellow tiles and the chip in the counter where I dropped a cast iron skillet when I was 12. Living room with the fireplace that actually works, unlike the decorative gas logs at my father's estate. The reading chair by the window, cracked leather that molded to her body over 40 years of books and afternoon light. I sit in that chair now. The photo albums are still on the side table. I don't open them. I know what's inside. My grandmother and me, hundreds of pictures spanning 18 years. Her teaching me to garden, to cook, to code on that ancient desktop computer she bought at a yard sale because she believed technology was power and girls needed power. Not a single photo includes my father or Sloane, unless it's a formal family portrait where everyone's smiling and lying. She knew. Even then, she knew. I was always the giver. The one who showed up with groceries when she had the flu, who fixed her computer when it crashed, who sat with her during her last month when the hospice nurse said she had days left and everyone else had better things to do. Sloane came twice. My father didn't come at all. And when she died, they cried at the funeral. Loud, performative grief that made the other mourners pat their shoulders and murmur condolences. They wore black and dabbed at dry eyes and accepted sympathy like they'd lost something irreplaceable. Then they tried to sell her house 3 months later. I pull out my phone. Sloane's post has crossed 1,000 likes now. The comments have multiplied. My phone buzzes with texts from distant relatives I haven't heard from in years, all of them concerned, all of them CCing my father like I'm a problem that needs managing. The cruelty was designed. Calculated. They want me desperate and ashamed when I sign those papers at 3 o'clock. They want me so grateful for their attention that I don't ask questions. My grandmother's voice echoes in my head, clear as if she's sitting across from me. The house is wood and stone, Mary. Your dignity is what matters. I hear gravel crunch outside. Footsteps on the porch. The door opens without knocking. Kalen fills the doorway, a black folder in his hands. He's wearing his standard uniform. Dark suit, no tie, expression that gives away nothing. But his eyes are different today. Softer. Almost apologetic. The final documents, boss. He sets the folder on the side table. Everything's ready. I don't open it. I know what's inside. The quitclaim deed. The waiver. The trap that looks like surrender. He doesn't leave. Just stands there, hands clasped behind his back, looking at the needlepoint on the wall. They don't deserve you. His voice is rough, unused to emotion. Your grandmother would be proud of what you've built. Something in my chest loosens. Not much, just enough to breathe. Thank you. He nods once and leaves. The door clicks shut behind him. My phone buzzes. Preston's name lights up the screen. IPO opens at $84 per share. You're about to become a billionaire. Ready? I type back with steady fingers. More ready than they'll ever know. 2 o'clock arrives faster than it should. I stand in my apartment bathroom, staring at the black suit hanging on the back of the door. Tom Ford, tailored to fit like armor. I bought it 6 months ago for board meetings with investors who needed to believe a 26-year-old woman could run a company worth billions. Today, I'm wearing it to a family party. I dress slowly, each piece deliberate. The suit, the white silk blouse beneath it, the Patek Philippe watch that cost more than my father's car. My reflection stares back. Stranger and familiar. The woman my grandmother always knew I'd become. 2:47 p.m. 1 hour before market close. I get into the town car. Kalen drives without asking where we're going. He knows. I text Preston. The bait is ready. Let them take it. His response is immediate. They won't know what hit them. The car pulls away from my apartment building. I don't look back. Don't need to. That life ends today. I'm not going to a party. I'm going to a negotiation. And they wanted to see me sign my life away. They'll get their wish. Just not the way they expect. The library smells like leather and lies. Old money and older secrets. I used to love this room when I was a kid. Back when I thought the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves meant my father valued knowledge. Now I know they're just expensive wallpaper. Half those books have never been opened. Richard sits behind the mahogany desk like a king granting audience. His personal attorney stands beside him, some gray suit with a forgettable face and a very memorable hourly rate. Bryce leans against the bookshelf to my left, arms crossed, that smug little smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The smile that says he's already counting his commission. It's 3 o'clock. 1 hour until market close. The door opens behind me. Sloane's perfume arrives 5 seconds before she does, something French and floral and suffocating. She sweeps past me without acknowledgement, taking her position at Richard's right hand like she's been doing since we were children, the favored daughter. The one who became a surgeon, who married well, who posts perfectly filtered photos of her perfectly curated life. Thank you for coming, Meredith. Richard's voice carries that particular tone. The one that sounds warm but isn't. The one he uses on clients right before he explains why their case is hopeless. I know this is short notice. You said it was important. I keep my voice soft, uncertain. The way I used to sound at 19 when I desperately wanted him to notice me, to see me, to value anything I did. It is. He gestures to the chair across from him. Please. Sit. I sit. Fold my hands in my lap. Let my shoulders curve inward just slightly. The body language of someone who's never learned to take up space. The attorney slides a document across the desk. Heavy bond paper. At least 20 pages. The title is printed in bold. Trust Fund, Release, and Property Transfer. My heart doesn't race. My hands don't sweat. But I make sure they think they do. We've been discussing your future, Richard begins. He actually sounds paternal. Concerned. Like he's about to do me a favor instead of rob me blind. You're 26 years old. Still trying to find your path. That's admirable, sweetheart. But it's time we helped you get started. Started with what? I let my voice crack just a little. Just enough. With your life. Sloane's tone could cut glass. We're releasing $50,000 from the family trust. Seed money for your little computer hobby. Little computer hobby. The words sit in my chest like stones. Aether Systems employs 217 people. We provide cybersecurity infrastructure for 70% of the Fortune 500. Our quarterly revenue exceeds what their law firm makes in 2 years. But I don't say any of that. Instead, I pick up the document with trembling fingers. Real trembling this time, not from fear but from the sheer effort of not laughing in their faces. I scan the first page. Standard trust release language. Page 2 outlines the $50,000 payment, makes it sound generous, necessary, overdue. By page 3, we're into property transfer clauses. By page 7, paragraph 3, they're taking everything. Rosewood Cottage. My grandmother's house. The only place I ever felt safe. They're transferring the deed to cover outstanding family obligations. $20 million in gambling debts, disguised as legal fees for bad cases, Richard took because he thought he was smarter than everyone else in the courtroom. He wasn't. The cottage appraises at $850,000. They're trading my inheritance for 4% of what they owe, and they think I won't notice because I'm too stupid to read past the money part. This is very generous. The attorney speaks for the first time. His voice has the practiced neutrality of someone who's witnessed a lot of terrible things and cashed a lot of checks anyway. Given your situation, Miss Scott, I'd say your family is being extraordinarily accommodating. My situation. Like I'm the problem. Like I'm the one who gambled away millions and dragged everyone else down with me. I don't understand. I look up at Richard. Let my eyes get wet. Not crying, just on the edge of it. Why the cottage? That's Grandma's house. Was her house? Sloane's already bored with this conversation. Her phone sits on the desk in front of her, Instagram open. Ready to document my breakdown for 15,000 followers. She's been dead for 3 years, Mary. You can't even afford the property taxes. But I could figure something out. My voice goes higher, desperate. Please, Dad, it's all I have. You'll have $50,000. Richard checks his Rolex. 3:17. He's getting impatient. That's more than most people your age have managed to save. You should be grateful. Grateful. The word tastes like poison. Can't we find another way? I'm pleading now. Full performance. I could get a job. A real job. I could help pay off the debts myself. Bryce actually laughs. Doing what, Meredith? You've been coding in your apartment for 6 years. No publications, no portfolio anyone's seen, no professional network. The market's brutal right now. You'd be lucky to land an entry-level position. It's better this way. Sloane doesn't even look up from her phone. You can't afford the upkeep anyway. No real income. And honestly, living in the past isn't healthy. You need to move forward. I found a buyer who'll preserve it, Bryce adds. You should be grateful someone wants it at all in this market. The attorney taps the signature line on page 19. Miss Scott, I have another appointment at 4. If we could finalize this now. Richard leans forward. His expression shifts. Not paternal anymore. Just cold. Sign it or get nothing. We're done coddling you, Meredith. It's time you learned how the real world works. The clock on the wall reads 3:42. 18 minutes until market close. Sign. The document. Richard bites off each word. I reach for the pen, allowing my hand to tremble visibly. But before the tip touches the paper, I stop. I want a copy, I whisper. For my records. Grandma always said to keep records. Richard rolls his eyes. For God's sake! It's standard procedure, Mr. Scott. The attorney murmurs, pulling a duplicate set from his briefcase. Actually, it's better for enforcement if we have duplicate originals, both parties holding an executed copy. He slides the second set across the mahogany. I sign the first one, then the second. My handwriting looks broken, uncertain on both. Richard signs. The attorney notarizes both stacks with efficient, heavy thunks of his stamp. Happy? Richard snatches his copy before the ink dries. Doesn't read past page 2. Never even glances at page 7. I pull my copy toward me, folding it slowly, clutching it to my chest like a security blanket. Thank you, Daddy. Excellent. Richard stands. I'm glad we could resolve this efficiently. The funds will be transferred to your account by end of week. They leave. All of them. Sloane already typing something on her phone, probably a post about difficult family members and tough love. Bryce shoots me one last pitying look, before following them out. The attorney packs his briefcase without a word. The door closes. Silence. I count to 10, then 20, making absolutely sure they're gone. The tears vanish. Just gone, like turning off a faucet. I check my Patek Philippe. 3:47, 13 minutes to close. Checkmate, I whisper to the empty room. I stand and smooth my jacket, checking that the duplicate original is secure in the inner pocket. The document includes complete waiver of all future familial financial claims, including but not limited to friends and family stock allocations, inheritance expectations, and corporate benefits. They just signed away $504 million for $50,000 and a cottage worth $850,000. I walk to the French doors that open onto the terrace. Outside, the garden party is already starting. I can hear the string quartet tuning up. I'm not leaving. Not yet. 11 minutes until they realize what they've done. 11 minutes until everything changes. The champagne tastes like victory. At least, that's what Richard thinks as he raises his glass at the podium, surveying 200 guests, scattered across the manicured lawn of the Scott estate. String quartet, uniformed servers, flower arrangements that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I stand near the back, black suit, sharp as a blade, watching him perform. To family legacy, he announces, voice carrying across the garden with practiced authority. To the businesses that define excellence in our community. Take Ether Systems, for example, remarkable cybersecurity firm. Their IPO today represents everything American enterprise should aspire to. Innovation, discipline, vision. Sloan stands beside him, phone held high. Instagram live stream. 15,000 viewers watching her father pontificate about success while she angles for the perfect shot. Her smile is luminous. She thinks she's won. Unlike some hobbies, Richard continues, and I feel the shift coming before he makes it. Not everyone understands the difference between serious business and playing with computers in a basement, but that's fine. The world needs all types. Ev. Polite laughter ripples through the crowd. Several guests glance my direction. I don't flinch. 4 p.m. exactly. The closing bell rings somewhere in Manhattan, and the universe tilts on its axis. Bloomberg terminals throughout the party erupt simultaneously. Sharp electronic chimes, guests' phones buzzing in pockets, clutches, jacket linings. The string quartet falters mid-phrase as musicians check their devices. What the hell? Someone mutters near the bar. The murmurs start low, building like a wave gathering strength. AET up 400%? Ether Systems IPO closed at $336 per share? That's impossible. The opening was $84. Richard keeps talking, oblivious. Still mid-sentence about family values and business acumen. Still performing for an audience that's no longer listening. Preston Vance steps forward from the crowd. Tailored gray suit. SEC S1 filing printed and bound in his hands like scripture. He moves with the quiet confidence of someone who's closed billion-dollar deals before breakfast. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice cuts through Richard's speech without raising in volume. I apologize for the interruption, but I believe some clarification is needed. Richard stops, confused, annoyed. Preston, this isn't the time. I'd like to introduce the founder and CEO of Ether Systems. Preston turns, extends his hand toward me. M.J. Scott, who's been operating under her initials for privacy. Silence crashes over the garden like a physical force. 200 faces turn toward me, mouths open, eyes wide. The kind of stunned recognition that happens when reality rewrites itself in real time. Richard's face drains of color. All that expensive, scotch-fueled confidence evaporating as his brain catches up to what his ears just heard. M.J., someone whispers. Meredith, Jane. I don't move, don't speak, let them process. Sloane's phone drops 3 inches before she catches it. The live stream wobbles, captures her expression perfectly. Mathematical horror beginning its slow crawl across her features. Richard recovers first. Of course he does. Decades of courtroom performance taught him how to pivot when the case turns against him. My daughter? He rushes toward me, arms spread wide for an embrace. I always believed in her vision. I always knew. I step back. One clean movement. His arms close on empty air. He freezes, recalculates, pivots again. Turns to Preston. The friends and family IPO allocations. We should discuss those. I'm sure Meredith has reserved shares for her family. Haven't you, sweetheart? Sloane's fingers fly across her phone screen. I can see the calculation happening in real time. $336 per share, multiplied by whatever allocation she thinks she deserves. Her eyes glaze with the kind of greed that makes people stupid. Bryce Sterling stands near the fountain, frozen. His investment banking brain doing the math differently. His commission on the cottage sale. Pocket change. Nothing. Less than nothing compared to what he just realized he lost. I reach into my jacket, pull out the document I folded and tucked away in the library 13 minutes ago. The duplicate original. About those allocations, Father. My voice carries. Calm. Clear. The voice I use in board meetings when I'm about to fire someone who thought they were indispensable. The garden goes silent again. Even the string quartet stops pretending to play. There's a clause in the document you signed. Page 7, paragraph 3. Would you like me to read it, or would you prefer to read it yourself? Richard's face shifts. Confusion to concern to dawning comprehension. What document? The one you witnessed at 3:47 p.m. The trust fund release and property transfer. The one you were so eager to have me sign that you didn't read past page 2. I unfold the paper. Hold it up so the guests closest can see the notary seal. The witness signatures. Richard's own attorney's stamp at the bottom. Complete waiver of all future familial financial claims. I read aloud. Each word landing like a hammer blow, including but not limited to friends and family stock allocations, inheritance expectations, and corporate benefits. Sloane's phone clatters to the flagstone. Doesn't shatter. Just lies there, live stream still running, capturing her face as understanding destroys her from the inside out. Preston steps forward again. Numbers man. Always has the data ready. The friends and family allocation was 1.5 million shares. At the closing price of $336 per share, that's $504 million. Someone gasps. Multiple someones. The math is too big, too devastating, too perfectly brutal to process quietly. You forced them to sign it away, Preston continues, looking at Richard, for $50,000 and a cottage appraised at $850,000. Richard's mouth opens, closes, opens again. No sound emerges, his lawyer brain trying desperately to find the loophole, the out, the appeal. There isn't one. He witnessed the signature himself. Their greed, I say quietly, cost them $500 million. Sloane makes a sound. Not quite a sob, not quite a scream. Something between the two that belongs to someone watching their entire future collapse in real time. I turn to Richard. Make sure every witness hears what comes next. Aether Systems is also raising Scott and Partners' cybersecurity premiums by 20%, effective immediately. Consider it professional risk assessment based on high-risk client status. 140 witnesses, including his law partners, including the judges he plays golf with, including everyone who matters in his professional world. Sloane's Instagram livestream captured everything. 15,000 viewers watched her face register mathematical horror, watched her father try to claim credit for success he'd mocked, watched the family that called me stupid lose $500 million because they couldn't read 7 pages of legal documents. Bryce's investment banking reputation just died. Association alone will kill him in this industry. Nobody trusts a banker who can't spot a trap that obvious. I fold the document, slide it back into my jacket, turn toward the exit. Enjoy the party, I say over my shoulder. It's the last thing I'm paying for. Kaylin waits by the car, opens the door without a word. I slide into the leather seat. The door closes with a sound like a vault ceiling. Behind me, the garden erupts in whispers. Phones out. Messages flying. The story spreading like wildfire through networks that will carry it to every corner of their professional lives. The car pulls away from the estate. Away from the people inside who thought I was too stupid to read fine print. They were wrong. And now everyone knows exactly how wrong they've been. 3 days later, the Wall Street Journal sits folded on the leather seat beside me. I don't need to open it again. The headline is burned into my vision. Mystery CEO M.J. Scott, revealed as 6-year-old tech prodigy. Forbes put my net worth at $2.8 billion. They're conservative. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Interview requests from Bloomberg, CNBC, TechCrunch. Acquisition offers that start with 9 figures. Investor meetings that would have made my father weep if he understood what they meant. He doesn't. He never will. The SUV glides through morning traffic at 8 a.m., Kaylin silent behind the wheel. My first board meeting as publicly known CEO starts in 90 minutes. 3 acquisition targets on the agenda. Expansion plans that will double our cybersecurity footprint within 18 months. But first, there's other business to handle. My phone vibrates. Email notification from Willow Holdings LLC, the shell company I established 6 months ago when I first suspected my family might try something desperate. Subject line, property transfer complete. Rosewood Cottage is mine. The bank was happy to sell the mortgage note holding the cottage as collateral, a clean transaction, cash for debt. Since Richard's ownership was contingent on the contract he violated, I am now the creditor holding the keys. I tap open the attached property inspection report. Richard and Sloane have been using my grandmother's house for storage. Valuable antiques, they claimed when they moved their things in last spring. The inspector's photos tell a different story. Reproduction furniture from discount warehouses. Costume jewelry in fake Tiffany boxes. A collection of paintings that might fool someone who shops at hotel liquidation sales. They plan to have it all appraised fraudulently. Insurance fraud, most likely. Another scheme, another shortcut, Another crime. They thought I was too stupid to notice. I attached the digital eviction notice to my response email. 30 days to remove their belongings. Standard legal language. Professional. Cold. Send. My father's attorney calls 6 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. Listen while I watch the city roll past my window. Threats of litigation. Accusations of elder abuse, of theft, of manipulating a confused old man who only wanted to help his daughter. I save the voicemail. Evidence. Always evidence. Review the quitclaim deed. I text back. You witnessed the signature. Everything is legal. Everything is documented. This conversation is over. Block number. Sloane's voicemail comes through next. I play the first 3 seconds. Rage, tears, something about betrayal and family, and how could I do this to them after everything they've done for me? Delete. Don't need to hear the rest. Bryce texts. Can we talk? Block. Delete. Gone. The family group chat sits at the top of my messages. 17 unread texts since last night. Richard, trying to explain, to justify, to manipulate. Sloane demanding I fix this, that I apologize, that I remember who raised me. Distant cousins and aunts chiming in with their opinions about my responsibilities and my selfishness and my ungrateful nature. I delete the entire thread without reading past the previews. Then I change my phone number. The process takes 4 minutes. Preston gets the new one. Kaylin already has it. My executive team will receive it this morning with strict instructions about privacy protocols. Everyone else can figure out how to contact me through official channels, if they're worth my time. The board meeting agenda glows on my tablet screen. Expansion into 3 new markets. Acquisition targets that will solidify our position as the dominant cybersecurity provider for financial institutions. Revenue projections that made our CFO double-check his calculations. I'm ready. More than ready. The SUV pulls up to Ether Systems headquarters at 8:47 a.m. Modern glass and steel. 5 stories. Our name in brushed metal letters that catch the morning sun. I had them installed last week while the IPO was still pending. No more hiding. Through the glass walls, I can see the lobby. 200 employees gathered, waiting. Someone must have sent a message that I was arriving. Kaylin opens my door. The cool morning air carries the scent of success and coffee and something new. Something that belongs entirely to me. They start clapping before I'm through the entrance. A standing ovation that echoes off the marble floors and high ceilings. My people. My team. The family I chose instead of the one I was born into. Preston appears at my elbow, immaculate in his suit, eyes bright with something that might be pride. Ready, MJ? I look at the faces watching me. Young engineers who bet their careers on my vision, executives who left prestigious positions to build something real. Security specialists who understand that protection means more than just code. I've been ready my whole life, I tell him. They just couldn't see it. We walk through the applause, through the lobby, toward the executive elevators that will take me to the boardroom where I belong. The past stays behind me where it belongs. The future is mine.
My brother walked away after seeing me collapse in a freezing snowstorm. The next morning he showed up at the hospital and casually asked the doctor how I was doing. The doctor looked at him and delivered one single sentence. My brother froze his face, turning pale as police officers stepped out from the hallway. I am Paige, 33 years old, and until that freezing night in Aspen, I actually believed family meant something. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you. Sign the paper, Paige. Trent shoved the thick legal deed directly into my chest. The heavy parchment crumpled against my sweater, but I refused to take it from his hands. We were standing in the living room of our late grandmother's cabin in Aspen, Colorado. Outside, a massive blizzard was tearing through the mountains, throwing sheets of white against the large glass windows, but the temperature inside the cabin felt just as hostile. Trent was 36 years old, a vice president at a prominent investment fund, and the undisputed golden child of our family. He wore his expensive cashmere sweater and custom watch like armor, but right now, that armor was cracking. He needed me to sign over my half of the cabin, a property worth over $2 million. He claimed he was facing a temporary liquidity issue and just needed collateral for a short-term bridge loan. But I am a director of healthcare data analytics. My entire career is built on finding anomalies in complex systems, verifying records, and identifying fraud. I knew how to spot bad numbers. I knew my brother was drowning in massive debt. His wife Jada, a lifestyle influencer who built her massive online following by pretending they lived like royalty, was currently back in Seattle swiping credit cards that were undoubtedly on the verge of bouncing. I am not signing away grandmother's house to fund Jada's designer bag collection, I told him, letting the deed fall to the rustic wooden floor between us. I stood my ground, keeping my voice steady. You have been living beyond your means for 5 years, Trent. You cannot use my inheritance to bail yourself out of a margin call. Trent's face contorted with a mixture of panic and rage. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging painfully into my skin. You do not understand how much trouble I am in, he hissed, his polished facade entirely gone. I need this capital by Monday morning. If I do not secure this loan, my firm is going to start looking into my accounts. They will see everything. Then you should have thought about that before you started treating client money like your personal piggy bank, I replied evenly, yanking my arm free from his grip. I am not liquidating a family asset because you and Jada cannot stick to a budget. Tell your wife she needs to fly commercial for once. The mention of Jada made Trent snap completely. He lunged forward, grabbing the deed from the floor and forcing me backward toward the heavy wooden front door of the cabin. You have always been a selfish, jealous brat, he yelled, his face inches from mine. You sit in your boring corporate job and judge us because you do not know what it takes to maintain a real image. He grabbed the brass handle of the front door and yanked it open. The sub-zero wind and driving snow immediately howled into the cozy cabin, knocking over a lamp and sending a flurry of paperwork flying across the room. Before I could brace myself, Trent shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, my boots slipping on the icy planks of the front porch. I fell hard against the wooden railing, the sudden blast of negative 10-degree air hitting my unprotected face. I have had severe asthma since I was a young child. Extreme cold is my absolute worst trigger. Combined with the massive spike of adrenaline from the physical altercation, my lungs reacted instantly. It felt as though a heavy iron band had clamped down around my chest. My airway began seizing shut violently and rapidly. I dropped to my knees on the snow-covered porch, gasping desperately for air that simply would not enter my lungs. A terrible wheezing sound escaped my throat. I clutched at my chest, my vision already beginning to blur at the edges. I needed my emergency rescue inhaler. It was in the pocket of my heavy winter coat, which was currently hanging on the rack just inside the warm, brightly lit cabin. I reached out a shaking hand toward the open doorway. Trent? I gasped the word, barely a rasp. Inhaler. Please. Trent stood in the doorway, perfectly safe and warm. He looked down at me, struggling to draw a single life-saving breath. Then he looked at the unsigned legal deed still clutched in his hand. His expression shifted from blind anger to something incredibly cold, calculating, and terrifyingly calm. If you are not going to help me, Paige, you are just a liability, he said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. He did not turn around to grab my coat. He did not pull out his expensive smartphone to call emergency services. Instead, he stepped out onto the freezing porch, crouched beside my convulsing body, and reached his hand into the front pocket of my jeans. He pulled out the keys to my four-wheel drive vehicle. Then, without a single second glance, my brother stood up, stepped right over my gasping body, and walked down the snow-covered driveway. I watched through dimming, tear-filled eyes as he climbed into his luxury SUV, started the engine, and drove away into the absolute whiteout conditions, leaving me alone to freeze to death in the snow. The red glow of Trent's taillights bled into the swirling white curtain of the blizzard, fading until there was absolutely nothing left but the blinding snow and the deafening howl of the wind. I lay there on the icy wooden planks of the porch with my chest heaving in shallow, useless spasms. The cold was not just a temperature, but a physical entity, a predator sinking its teeth into my exposed skin. Every desperate attempt to inhale felt like drawing shattered glass directly down my trachea. He was truly gone. My own brother had looked me in the eyes, calculated the value of my life against his margin calls, and chosen his bank account without a second of hesitation. Panic is an absolute death sentence for an asthmatic. My analytical brain, the same brain that commanded a high-level executive salary dissecting complex healthcare data models, forcibly shoved the terror aside. I had to evaluate the variables of my survival immediately. Variable A was the temperature currently plummeting past -10 degrees Fahrenheit. Variable B was my airway closing tighter with every passing second as the freezing air shocked my bronchial tubes. Variable C was the distance to the main access road, approximately 200 yards, down a steeply winding and unplowed driveway. The cabin itself was miles from the main highway. The odds of my survival were statistically abysmal. But I absolutely refused to become a convenient tragedy for Trent and Jada to exploit for sympathy and financial gain. I tried to stand by, grabbing the frozen wooden railing for support, but my legs buckled instantly. The lack of oxygen was already starving my muscles of their basic function. Walking was a physical impossibility. If I stayed on that porch, I would freeze to death within the hour and become nothing more than a frozen stepping stone to Trent's financial freedom. I had to move right now. I dragged my body off the edge of the porch, dropping heavily into the knee-deep powder of the driveway. The shock of the snow soaking through my thin cashmere sweater was instantaneous and brutal. The moisture seeped into my jeans, turning the fabric into a freezing heavy restraint that clung to my skin. I began to crawl. I dug my bare, trembling hands into the icy powder and pulled my dead weight forward inch by agonizing inch. The wind roared through the towering aspen pines around me, mocking my pathetic progress. My hands quickly lost all sensation as the fingers turned a raw, angry red before shifting to a terrifying, bloodless white. Drag, pull, gasp. The cycle became my entire universe. Ice crystals lashed against my face like tiny razors, slicing my cheeks and freezing my eyelashes together. I kept my eyes fixed on the faint, dark tree line that marked the edge of the property. I needed to reach the county road. It was the only route that might possibly see a plow or a salt truck before morning. The physical agony in my chest was absolute torture. My lungs were screaming as they desperately demanded air that the constricted airways simply refused to deliver. A high-pitched rattling wheeze forced its way out of my throat with every single exhalation, creating a pathetic soundtrack to my desperate fight for life. To distract myself from the overwhelming sensation of suffocation, I focused intensely on the anger. I pictured Jada sitting in her pristine Seattle penthouse, recording a lifestyle vlog with a counterfeit smile while waiting for the phone call, confirming her sister-in-law had tragically succumbed to the elements. I pictured Trent standing at my funeral, wearing a bespoke black suit paid for with my inheritance, dabbing away fake tears while secretly calculating exactly how quickly he could liquidate my healthcare analytics firm. That vivid image of their absolute unpunished triumph was a hotter fire than the freezing snow could ever extinguish. Anger was a remarkably effective fuel when oxygen was lacking. 10 yards. 20 yards. My knees struck the hidden gravel beneath the snow, tearing the fabric of my jeans and scraping my skin completely raw. I did not care about the bleeding. I pushed forward and dragged my frozen limbs through the rapidly mounting drifts. The blizzard was escalating fiercely rapidly, burying the deep tracks Trent's luxury SUV had just made. The absolute isolation of the Colorado mountains pressed down on me from all sides. I was entirely alone out there, just a speck of failing biology in a vast and completely uncaring winter storm. 50 yards. 100 yards. My vision began to narrow severely, the edges of the world turning dark and fuzzy. Hypoxia was setting in. My brain was actively starving for oxygen, shutting down non-essential functions to keep my heart beating. The terrifying symptoms of severe hypothermia followed closely behind the hypoxia. The agonizing, biting cold suddenly began to recede, replaced by a bizarre and highly dangerous sensation of warmth. My mind whispered deceptively that it would be so much easier to just stop moving. Just close my eyes for a single minute. Just let the soft snow act as a comforting blanket. The urge to surrender was a heavy, intoxicating gravity pulling me down into the powder. No. I bit my own lip hard enough to taste copper, using the sharp, sudden spike of pain to jolt my fading consciousness back to reality. I shoved the lethal comfort aside and forced my bleeding hands to dig into the ice once more. Drag, pull, gasp. I could not let them win this. I could not let my death be the convenient solution to his massive corporate fraud. I visualized the data architecture in my mind. I visualized the bank routing numbers, the offshore accounts, the digital footprint I knew he must have left behind in his desperation. If I died in the snow, the data died with me. I had to survive long enough to expose him to the world. I finally reached the end of the driveway and collapsed heavily onto the shoulder of the county road. The asphalt was completely buried under more than a foot of fresh snow. There were absolutely no tire tracks. There were no streetlights. There was just an endless tunnel of swirling white surrounding me. I lay on my side with my cheek pressed directly against the ice, my chest barely moving. The violent wheezing had stopped entirely, not because I was breathing any easier, but because there was simply not enough air moving through my failing lungs to make a sound anymore. I had lost the battle. My body had absolutely nothing left to give to the fight. The darkness crept further inward, swallowing the outlines of the trees, swallowing the falling snow, until there was only a tiny pinprick of consciousness remaining. I closed my eyes as the freezing cold finally breached my core and began to shut down my organs. Just as the final thread of awareness began to snap, a deep, rhythmic vibration shuddered through the frozen asphalt directly beneath my cheek. It was not the wind. A low mechanical roar cut through the howling storm, growing louder and heavier with each passing second. I forced my heavy ice-crusted eyelids open one last time. Piercing through the blinding whiteout, massive rotating yellow and halogen white lights erupted into the darkness. The towering steel blade of a heavy county snowplow materialized from the storm and bore down on the road. The blinding lights flooded my entire vision, washing out the snow, washing out the night right as my world went entirely black. The first sensation was not pain, but an overwhelming artificial warmth. The steady rhythmic beeping of a cardiac monitor anchored me back to reality, pulling my consciousness up from the dark void. I forced my heavy eyelids open against the harsh, unforgiving glare of fluorescent hospital lights. My throat felt as though it had been scoured with crushed glass and wire wool. A thick plastic oxygen mask covered my nose and mouth, pushing forced air into my violently aching lungs. I tried to swallow and instantly choked, a sharp spasm of agony ripping through my damaged vocal cords. I was not in a small mountain clinic. The sophisticated hum of the machinery and the pristine high-tech monitors surrounding my bed told me I was in a major trauma center. Through the large glass window of the intensive care unit, I could see the distinct rain-slicked skyline of Seattle. The medical transport team must have airlifted me back to my home network once I was stabilized in Colorado. My corporate insurance mandated transfers to specialized regional trauma centers, a policy I had personally drafted the data models for just last year. My professional life had unknowingly secured my physical survival. The heavy glass door slid open with a soft mechanical hiss. A woman in crisp navy scrubs and a pristine white coat strode into the room. Her security badge read, Dr. Eris Thorne, Chief of Trauma. She had sharp, intelligent eyes that immediately locked onto mine, assessing my neurological state in a fraction of a second. She did not offer me a pitying smile, nor did she speak to me with the patronizing tone people often reserve for victims. She operated with the exact kind of high-level clinical efficiency I respected in the corporate boardroom. "You are awake," Dr. Thorne stated, moving straight to the monitor beside my bed to check my vitals. "You have been unconscious for 36 hours. A county snowplow driver spotted your hand sticking out of a snowdrift just before his heavy steel blade hit you. You were flown out of Aspen to our trauma unit here in Seattle due to severe hypothermia, acute respiratory failure, and early-stage frostbite. You are incredibly lucky to have all your limbs. You are statistically miraculous to have a pulse. I attempted to speak desperate to thank her and immediately ask for the police. The only sound that escaped my mouth was a wet, horrifying rasp that sent a fresh wave of fire down my trachea. "Do not try to use your vocal cords," Dr. Thorne commanded, instantly holding up a steady hand. "Your airway was severely compromised by the freezing air and the subsequent emergency intubation on the flight. You will cause permanent tissue damage if you force it. If you are cognitively aware and need to communicate right now, I can provide a digital tablet." I gave a single stiff nod. My physical body was battered, bruised, and broken, but my analytical mind was operating with absolute ice-cold clarity. The burning anger that had kept me crawling through the blinding snowstorm was now a focused, lethal determination. I needed to move fast before Trent and Jada could control the narrative and twist my near-death experience into a tragic accident. As Dr. Thorne handed me a sterile clinical tablet and a stylus, a broad-shouldered man in a rumpled gray suit stepped into the room. He flashed a silver badge. "I am Detective Russo," he said, his voice gravelly and serious. "I was assigned to your case the moment the Aspen authorities transferred jurisdiction. They found your purse and your luggage locked inside the cabin, but your vehicle and your brother were missing. We have been trying to piece together exactly how a woman with severe asthma ended up freezing in a snowbank while her brother vanished into thin air. If you are able to write, I need to know exactly what happened out there on that porch." I gripped the stylus tightly. My fingers were heavily bandaged, swollen, and trembling from nerve damage, but my muscle memory took over. I did not write a tearful, emotional diary entry. I wrote a highly structured, irrefutable incident report. My entire career as a healthcare data analytics director had trained me to present undeniable data that left absolutely no room for misinterpretation. I tapped the stylus against the glass screen, ignoring the sharp shooting pain in my knuckles. I typed my statement in clear clinical bullet points. I detailed Trent demanding I sign over our grandmother's deed to cover his massive financial debt. I detailed the physical altercation. I detailed my severe asthma attack triggered by the cold. Most importantly, I detailed his deliberate theft of my car keys and his conscious, calculated decision to abandon me on that porch to die. Then I handed them the ultimate piece of leverage. I typed out a specific IP address and the highly encrypted login credentials for a private cloud server. I turned the tablet around so both Detective Russo and Dr. Thorne could read the glowing screen. Detective Russo read the text aloud, his eyebrows rising toward his hairline. "You have hidden security cameras at the Aspen cabin." I nodded emphatically, snatching the tablet back to type one final paragraph. "I installed a 4K motion-activated security network along the entire perimeter of the roof and the front porch last summer, so I could monitor the vacant property from Seattle. The system uploads raw audio and high-definition video directly to a secure cloud server. Pull the footage from Thursday night between 8 and 9 o'clock. You will not just see him push me into the blizzard. You will see him step right over my dying body to search my pockets for my keys." Detective Russo's posture shifted instantly from a casual investigator to a predator catching a fresh scent of blood. He pulled out his radio and started barking sharp orders to his tech division to access the IP address immediately and secure the video files. Dr. Thorne read the tablet again, her jaw tightening with undisguised disgust. She looked down at me with a newfound level of deep professional respect. "You are a very smart woman, Paige," she said softly. Before anyone else could speak, the ICU room door swung open abruptly. A young triage nurse rushed in looking incredibly stressed, her eyes wide with alarm. "Dr. Thorne," she said breathlessly, clutching a clipboard to her chest. "I am so sorry to interrupt the police interview, but there is a massive situation rapidly escalating down in the main lobby." "What kind of situation?" Dr. Thorne asked, her clinical commanding tone returning instantly. The nurse glanced at me with deep, uncomfortable sympathy. "It is your brother Paige. He just showed up with his wife and a camera crew. He is putting on a massive scene, completely distraught, crying hysterically in front of the reception desk. He is screaming that he has been searching for you in the blizzard for 2 days and is demanding that hospital security let him up to this floor immediately to see his beloved sister." The absolute audacity of my brother was almost impressive in its sickness. He had not just come to check if I was dead, he had brought an audience to document his fake grief for Jada's social media channels. Detective Russo's radio crackled with chatter from the ground floor security detail confirming the chaotic scene unfolding below. I looked at the detective and tapped my stylus fiercely against the digital tablet. My swollen fingers flew across the glass screen, fueled by a surge of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. I turned the tablet around so both of them could read my hasty typing. Do not let him up here. He wants a photo opportunity next to an intensive care bed to prove his innocence to his investors and her followers. Confront him in the main lobby where his cameras are rolling. Give him exactly the audience he asked for. Dr. Thorne nodded, her expression hardening into absolute steel. She understood the assignment perfectly. I will handle the medical update, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerously calm register. Detective, you handle the legal update. Let us go give Mr. Gallagher his diagnosis. Before stepping out, Detective Russo handed his department-issued tablet to the triage nurse, instructing her to patch into the hospital's ground floor security feed. I wanted to watch every single second of the confrontation live from my bed. As Thorne and Russo marched out of the room, the nurse propped the heavy tablet on my rolling tray table. The high-definition feed showed the expansive, brightly lit main lobby of the trauma center. Trent was pacing frantically near the reception desk. He was dressed in a carefully disheveled designer sweater, repeatedly running his hands through his perfectly tousled hair to simulate deep emotional distress. Jada stood right beside him, holding her smartphone on a stabilizing gimbal to capture his best angles. She was dabbing her perfectly dry eyes with a tissue, fully playing the role of the devastated sister-in-law for her 500,000 followers. A small local news crew, undoubtedly tipped off by Jada herself to maximize the exposure, had set up a heavy broadcast camera near the sliding glass exit doors. Even without the audio, his theatrical gestures were sickening to witness. Then the hospital IT team linked the audio feed, and the loud, echoing noise of the lobby filled my quiet room. "You have to let me up there right now!" Trent shouted at the terrified receptionist, making sure his voice carried clearly to the news crew behind him. "That is my little sister. I have been scouring the mountains for 2 days in a massive blizzard looking for her. The police in Aspen did absolutely nothing, so I hired my own search teams. You cannot keep me from her. I need to know if she is going to survive." "Please!" Jada cried out, turning her face directly toward her smartphone camera to ensure her followers caught her distress. "My husband has not slept or eaten in 2 days. We are absolutely beside ourselves with worry. Paige is vulnerable and we just want to bring her safely home." The main elevator doors slid open behind them. Dr. Eris Thorne strode into the lobby, her pristine white coat billowing slightly behind her. Detective Russo walked a half-step back, his hand casually resting near his utility belt. The crowd of patients and visitors parted instinctively for the chief of trauma. "Mr. Gallagher." Dr. Thorne called out, her voice cutting through the lobby noise like a surgical scalpel. Trent spun around. He immediately registered her authoritative security badge and lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the reception counter as if he could barely hold his own weight up. "Doctor, please." Trent begged, his voice cracking with a perfectly practiced, agonizing sob. "How is my sister? I have been looking for her all night. Is she going to make it? Just tell me she is alive." Dr. Thorne did not offer a comforting smile. She did not lower her voice to preserve his privacy. She stood her ground, looked him dead in the eye, and delivered the crushing payload with absolute, terrifying clinical precision. "Oh, she is alive, Mr. Gallagher. In fact, she is doing remarkably well. She is alert enough to be watching the 4K security footage with Detective Russo right now." Trent's fake sob stopped instantly. His jaw went slack. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. Jada lowered her smartphone gimbal slowly, her manufactured tears vanishing as sheer, unadulterated confusion crossed her features. They were particularly impressed by the high-definition audio. Dr. Thorne continued, her voice echoing loudly through the suddenly silent lobby. "But the detective's favorite part was the moment you stepped right over her convulsing, gasping body to unbuckle the Rolex from her wrist before leaving her to freeze to death." The silence in the lobby was deafening. The local news camera was rolling, capturing every microscopic twitch of terror on Trent's face. Jada took a slow, horrified step away from her husband, realizing her live-streamed performance had just broadcast his guilt directly to the internet. Trent stammered, taking a desperate, stumbling step backward. "That is a lie. She is hallucinating from the cold. I never touched her." Detective Russo stepped around Dr. Thorne, his expression completely devoid of mercy. "Save the performance for the federal judge, Trent. We already have the raw video files uploaded from the cloud server. You are on camera stealing her vehicle keys and driving away while she begged for her inhaler." Fight or flight took over completely. Trent spun around, abandoning his devastated brother act in a split second, and bolted toward the sliding glass exit doors. He did not make it 3 steps. 2 uniformed police officers stepped out from the adjacent corridor, blocking his path entirely. They grabbed his shoulders, slammed him hard against the front reception desk, and pulled his arms forcefully behind his back. The sharp metallic click of handcuffs echoed loudly across the lobby. "Trent Gallagher!" the taller officer barked, pressing his weight against my brother's struggling frame. "You are under arrest for attempted manslaughter, grand theft auto, and reckless endangerment." Trent thrashed against the cold laminate counter, his face contorted in panic while Jada stood frozen in horror as her carefully curated world shattered on live video. Watching from my hospital bed, I leaned back against the pillows and took a deep, steadying breath of oxygen. He was finally in chains, but my war against this toxic family was just beginning. The live feed on the tablet abruptly cut out as the triage nurse gently pulled the device away from my tray table. The sterile quiet of the intensive care unit returned, leaving only the rhythmic hissing of my oxygen mask and the steady beep of the heart monitor. I closed my eyes and allowed the adrenaline to slowly recede from my battered nervous system. Seeing Trent handcuffed on live television was a massive victory, a visceral validation of my survival. But the deep, hollow ache in my chest had nothing to do with my damaged lungs. I knew my parents. I knew exactly how they operated. Trent being arrested would not be seen as a consequence of his own murderous actions. It would be viewed as an inconvenience I had deliberately caused them. I did not have to wait long for my prediction to become reality. Less than 2 hours after the lobby confrontation, the heavy glass door to my hospital room violently swung open. It did not slide with the usual mechanical hiss. It was shoved so hard the tracking mechanism shuddered. My mother Brenda marched into the room, her heels clicking aggressively against the linoleum floor. My father Richard followed closely behind her, pulling the door shut with a sharp snap. They looked entirely out of place in a trauma ward. Brenda was wearing her pristine tennis whites, her hair perfectly blown out, clutching a designer handbag like a shield. Richard wore his tailored golf slacks and a navy pullover. There were no tears in their eyes. There was no frantic rushing to my bedside to check my bandages or assess my breathing. There was only pure, unadulterated fury radiating from both of them. "Are you trying to ruin your brother's life over a misunderstanding?" Brenda snapped, stopping 2 feet from my bed. She did not ask how I was feeling. She did not ask if I was in pain. Her voice was a harsh, venomous hiss designed to intimidate. I stared at her through the clear plastic of my oxygen mask. The sheer audacity of her opening statement actually took my breath away. A misunderstanding. My own mother was categorizing my brother leaving me to freeze to death as a simple miscommunication. I tapped my digital tablet, writing my response slowly, because my frostbitten fingers still ached. I turned the screen toward her. "He stole my keys, stepped over my body, and left me in a blizzard. That is not a misunderstanding. That is attempted manslaughter." Richard scoffed loudly, crossing his arms over his chest. "Do not be so utterly dramatic, Paige." He stepped closer to the bed, looming over me with the same oppressive posture he used to win corporate negotiations. "You two had a disagreement over the cabin. You have always been prone to hysterics when you do not get your way. Trent said you stormed out onto the porch and slipped. He panicked because he had an urgent flight to catch to cover his margin calls. He did not know you were having an asthma attack. You are blowing this completely out of proportion to punish him." The cold detachment in my father's eyes was absolute. He had already accepted Trent's fabricated story because it was the most convenient narrative for his golden child. He did not care about the 4K security footage. He did not care that the chief of trauma had confirmed the severity of my condition. He only cared that his perfect son was currently sitting in a police precinct holding cell. "You need to fix this right now," Brenda commanded, stepping closer to the rail of my hospital bed. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at my face. "You are going to call Detective Russo. You are going to tell him that your asthma attack caused severe hypoxia, making you hallucinate the events on the porch. You will say Trent tried to help you but had to leave to find a cell signal. You will drop these ridiculous charges immediately." I glared at her, my fingers tightening around the edges of the digital tablet. I typed fiercely, ignoring the shooting pain in my joints. "I am not lying to the police to save a man who tried to kill me. The security cameras captured everything. The audio is crystal clear. He told me I was a liability. He took my Rolex. He took my keys. He left me to die." "Who cares about a stupid watch?" Richard raised his voice, his face flushing red with indignation. "Do you have any idea what you are doing to this family? The local news just ran the footage of Trent getting arrested in the lobby. Do you know how humiliating that is? We have the annual charity gala at the country club this weekend. Our friends are already calling asking why our son was handcuffed on television. You are making us a laughingstock in front of the entire board of directors." There it was, the absolute bottom line. My near-death experience was nothing more than a social inconvenience for them. I was lying in an intensive care unit, hooked up to life support machines, fighting for every single breath, and my parents were agonizing over their reputation at the country club. They were more concerned about answering awkward questions over cocktails than the fact that their daughter had almost returned to them in a body bag. Brenda leaned over the bed, lowering her voice to a harsh, threatening whisper. "You listen to me, Paige. Your brother is on the verge of a major promotion. Jada is securing massive brand deals. They have a future. You sit alone in your data labs crunching numbers. You do not need the family name the way they do. If you do not call the police and retract your statement immediately, we will cut you off completely. We will publicly state that your mental health has deteriorated and that you are making these accusations out of jealousy." They expected me to cry. They expected the old Paige, the daughter who had spent 3 decades desperately craving their approval, to break down and apologize for causing trouble. They expected me to shrink back, sign whatever they wanted, and sacrifice my own reality to protect their golden child. But as I looked at their angry, selfish faces, I felt absolutely nothing. No tears threatened to spill. No familiar pang of guilt twisted in my stomach. The freezing snowstorm had not just killed the tissue in my extremities, it had killed the last remaining tether I had to these people. They were not my parents. They were just Trent's enablers. I maintained unbroken eye contact with my mother as I slowly reached my injured hand toward the side rail of my bed. I did not type another word on the tablet. I did not offer a single defense or justification. Instead, I pressed my thumb firmly against the large red emergency call button. Within seconds, the heavy glass door swung open. A large hospital security guard and a triage nurse stepped into the room. I tapped my stylus on the tablet one final time and turned the screen toward the nurse. "These people are threatening me and elevating my heart rate. They are not authorized visitors. Please have security escort them off the premises permanently." Brenda gasped, her jaw dropping in sheer disbelief as the security guard stepped forward and firmly grasped Richard by the arm. "You cannot do this," she shrieked, her country club composure completely shattering. "We are your parents." I watched with cold, silent satisfaction as the guards physically corralled them out the door. Richard was shouting threats of disownment, while Brenda screamed about my selfishness. As the heavy glass door slid shut, silencing their toxic voices, the realization settled over me like a heavy protective armor. The entire family was officially against me, and I was absolutely ready to destroy them all. My first move was to assess the battlefield. I reached for my personal smartphone, which a nurse had kindly plugged into a charger near my tray table. I needed to begin gathering my own digital assets, locking down my corporate accounts, and preparing a watertight legal defense with Detective Russo. But before my frostbitten thumb could even unlock the home screen, the device began to vibrate violently in my hand. It was not a single phone call or a standard text message. It was a relentless machine gun rapid succession of notifications cascading down my screen faster than my eyes could track. They were all alerts from a major social media platform. Mentions, direct messages, and tags were multiplying by the thousands. I frowned, ignoring the sharp pain in my knuckles, and tapped the most recent notification. The app opened, and the perfectly curated, flawless face of my sister-in-law filled the screen. Jada was a master of the digital universe. As a highly successful African-American lifestyle influencer, she had built an empire of over 500,000 loyal followers by monetizing a carefully crafted illusion of perfection. She sold high-end wellness routines, luxury travel aesthetics, and the image of an aspirational, flawless marriage to a wealthy finance executive. Right now, she was using that massive platform to launch a coordinated lethal strike against my character. The video had been posted less than an hour ago, completely bypassing traditional media to weaponize her rabid fanbase directly. She was sitting in the immaculate living room of her Seattle penthouse. The lighting was soft and cinematic. She wore an oversized cashmere sweater, her usually perfect hair styled to look just the right amount of messy, creating the ultimate aesthetic of a woman pushed to the brink of emotional exhaustion. I turned up the volume on my phone, listening as her performance began. "My beautiful community." Jada spoke softly into the camera, her voice trembling with manufactured grief. "I usually come on here to share joy and positivity with you all. But today, my family is living through an absolute nightmare, and I need to speak the truth before the media twists our tragedy." She paused, bringing a manicured hand to wipe away a single perfectly placed tear. "Many of you have seen the horrific local news footage of my husband Trent being arrested at a hospital. What the news did not tell you is the heartbreaking reality of what we have been dealing with behind closed doors. My sister-in-law Paige has been battling a severe prescription pill addiction for years. We have tried everything to help her. We have offered to pay for rehab. We have staged interventions. We have given her nothing but love and support." My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. She was not just lying. She was weaponizing the language of mental health and addiction to assassinate my credibility. Jada looked directly into the camera lens, her expression shifting to one of profound tragic pity. "This weekend at our family cabin in Aspen, Paige suffered a massive drug-induced hallucination. She became violent, stole some items from the house, and wandered out into a deadly blizzard in a complete state of psychosis. My husband risked his own life searching the woods for her all night. When she was finally rescued by a snowplow driver and brought to the hospital, we thought our prayers were answered. We rushed to be by her side. She let out a ragged, cinematic sob covering her mouth, as if overcome by the weight of the betrayal. Instead of getting the psychiatric help she desperately needs, Paige is now using this tragedy to extort us. She is demanding we hand over our family properties to fund her habit, and she filed completely fabricated, malicious police reports against my husband to force our hand. Addiction is a terrible disease. It turns the people you love into monsters who will do anything for their next fix. We are choosing to set hard boundaries to protect our family, but we are completely devastated. Please keep Trent in your prayers while we fight to clear his name." The video ended. I stared at the screen, my analytical mind instantly dissecting the brilliance of her strategy. It was a masterful, devastating piece of digital warfare. By framing me as a severely unstable addict suffering from hallucinations, Jada had provided a convenient, socially acceptable explanation for why I was found wandering in the snow. She turned Trent from a cold-blooded attempted murderer into a tragic, self-sacrificing hero dealing with a toxic family member. Best of all, she had preemptively discredited any evidence I might bring forward, painting the security footage and police reports as the malicious fabrications of an addict trying to extort money. I looked at the metrics beneath the video. It already had 300,000 views and was climbing exponentially with every refresh. The comment section was an absolute bloodbath. Jada had cultivated a fan base that operated like a loyal army, and she had just pointed them directly at me. Influencers and minor celebrities were chiming in, leaving heart emojis and messages of support for Jada and Trent, praising them for their bravery in dealing with such a toxic family member. They commended her for setting boundaries. The narrative had been successfully hijacked and completely inverted in the court of public opinion. Then the digital attack escalated from a public smear campaign to a targeted personal assault. Somehow, whether through a deliberate leak by Jada or the relentless digging of her rabid followers, my personal cell phone number and private social media handles had been broadcast to the mob. My phone screen lit up, completely freezing for a second, under the sheer volume of incoming data. The notifications transformed into an endless scrolling waterfall of pure digital venom. Direct messages flooded my inbox. Text messages from unknown numbers bombarded my screen. "You are a disgusting junkie. How dare you try to ruin an innocent man's life to buy more pills? You should have frozen to death in that snowbank. I hope the police lock you up in a psych ward forever." The device grew physically hot in my hand as hundreds of hate messages poured in every single minute. Strangers from all over the country, people who knew absolutely nothing about me or the truth of that freezing night in Aspen, were actively wishing for my death. The viral mob was relentless, blind, and terrifyingly efficient. I was trapped in a hospital bed, physically broken, and now entirely isolated under the crushing weight of a nationwide smear campaign. The onslaught of hatred continued to explode across my screen, burying me in a brand new kind of storm. The onslaught of hatred continued to explode across my screen, burying me in a brand new kind of storm. The device vibrated so aggressively it threatened to slip from my heavily bandaged fingers. I navigated straight to the settings menu and forcefully deactivated every single social media alert. The sudden digital silence in my hospital room was immediate, but the damage was already accelerating beyond my control. As a healthcare data analytics director, my entire professional existence is predicated on absolute data integrity, ironclad security clearance, and unshakable trustworthiness. I manage systems that audit pharmaceutical distribution and enforce HIPAA compliance frameworks across nationwide hospital networks. If the public believed I was a compromised addict wandering around in psychotic hazes, my career was functionally dead. My phone vibrated again. It was not another hate message from one of Jada's rabid followers. The caller ID displayed the name David Preston, the chief executive officer of my firm. David was a ruthlessly pragmatic, numbers-driven man who had recruited me specifically to overhaul the corporate compliance architecture. I swiped the green icon and brought the device to my ear, bracing myself for the impact. "Paige, tell me you are safe and recovering," David said. His voice was strained, lacking its usual confident corporate boom. "I am in the intensive care unit, David. I survived," I replied, my voice still a harsh, painful rasp from the freezing air. "I saw the local news reports about Trent getting arrested in the lobby." David continued, his tone shifting rapidly into careful corporate diplomacy. "And then the board of directors forwarded me a video your sister-in-law posted online, the one that currently has over 2 million views and is trending nationally." I closed my eyes, leaning my head back against the stiff hospital pillows. "David, every single word in that video is a fabricated lie designed to cover up an attempted manslaughter charge. I do not have a prescription pill addiction. I was physically attacked and left to freeze to death." "I want to believe you, Paige. Personally, I really do." David sighed heavily. "But professionally, my hands are entirely tied. Our firm manages the highly sensitive medical records of over 14 million patients. Your specific division audits controlled substance tracking and hospital compliance. The board of directors held an emergency meeting 20 minutes ago. Our top 3 hospital network clients have already called our legal department, threatening to suspend their multi-million-dollar contracts. They absolutely cannot have a lead director with top-level security clearance publicly trending under allegations of severe prescription drug addiction and psychosis." The room felt suddenly devoid of oxygen all over again. "You are suspending me. Effective immediately." David confirmed, the regret evident in his voice, but ultimately useless to my survival. You are placed on unpaid administrative leave pending a full corporate investigation and the absolute resolution of these legal matters. Your corporate access credentials have already been revoked. Your company laptop and secure servers are locked down. I am incredibly sorry, Paige. Get better. Clear your name, then we can talk about bringing you back. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone to my lap. In the span of 48 hours, Trent and Jada had successfully stripped me of everything. My brother took my physical safety and attempted to steal my inheritance. My parents took my family foundation by actively defending the man who tried to kill me. Now Jada had taken my reputation, my income, and my daily professional purpose. I was entirely cut off from the career I had spent 10 years building from the ground up. Dr. Thorne entered the room an hour later with a thick stack of discharge papers. My oxygen levels were finally stable enough for outpatient recovery, though my fingers remained heavily wrapped to protect the recovering tissue from the early-stage frostbite. A hospital social worker followed closely behind her, dropping off a clear plastic bag containing the few personal items recovered from my coat pockets out on the ice. I slowly pulled myself out of the hospital bed. Every single muscle in my body screamed in violent protest. The massive purple and black bruises blooming across my ribs and hips served as a painful reminder of my violent fall against the icy porch railing. Because my own clothes had been cut away during the emergency trauma admission, I was forced to change into a set of standard gray hospital scrubs provided by the nursing staff. The coarse fabric rubbed against my raw, scraped skin, but I gritted my teeth and forced myself to dress independently. Standing in front of the small bathroom mirror, I stared critically at my own reflection. I looked physically destroyed. My skin was pale and hollow, my lips were cracked and bleeding, and a stark white bandage covered a deep laceration on my cheekbone. I had absolutely no job to return to on Monday morning. I had no family to call for a ride home. I had an army of internet strangers actively praying for my downfall. Yet as I walked back to the bed and signed the final discharge paperwork with my injured hand, I did not shed a single tear. The panic was completely gone. The lingering childhood desire for my parents' validation had evaporated into the sterile hospital air. Jada thought she won the war by controlling the social media narrative with her manufactured tears. Trent thought he could hide behind his high-priced defense lawyers and our parents' country club influence. They had made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed I would react like a broken, helpless victim. They forgot that I dismantle complex data architectures for a living. I find the hidden flaws, I trace the anomalies, and I ruthlessly expose the truth using undeniable metrics. I stepped out of the hospital, sliding doors into the freezing Seattle rain. My body was battered, bruised, and officially stripped of its daily life, but my analytical brain was now operating with ice-cold clarity. I hailed a rideshare from the hospital curb, sliding into the back seat of a quiet, scentless sedan. The driver did not ask questions about my oversized gray hospital scrubs or the thick white bandages wrapping my hands, for which I was profoundly grateful. As we navigated the slick, rain-soaked streets of Seattle, I rigidly compartmentalized my immediate tasks to keep the physical pain at bay. Step 1 was securing my physical environment. My home office contained a fireproof safe with encrypted backup drives, hardware ledgers, and emergency cash. Step 2 was initiating a total financial lockdown of all my personal accounts before my parents could attempt any further manipulation. The vehicle pulled up to my modern 3-story townhouse. I thanked the driver, stepped out into the freezing downpour, and walked up the paved driveway. My property was my sanctuary. I had purchased it outright 3 years ago with the corporate bonuses I earned designing predictive healthcare models. It was the one place where the toxic reach of my family had never been allowed to penetrate. I had explicitly designed my life to be a fortress of independence. I reached the covered front porch and extended my bruised index finger to the biometric smart lock on the heavy front door. I pressed my thumb against the glass sensor. A sharp double beep sounded, and the LED indicator flashed a bright solid red. Access denied. I frowned, wiping a drop of cold rain from the sensor, assuming the moisture or my damaged skin was interfering with the optical read. I moved my hand to the keypad, and entered my highly secure 6-digit master passcode. Another harsh double beep echoed on the porch. The red light flashed again. The master code had been entirely wiped from the system firmware. A cold spike of adrenaline hit my bloodstream momentarily, overriding the dull ache in my fractured ribs. I reached into the plastic hospital belongings bag and pulled out my physical backup key. I slid the metal into the manual override cylinder beneath the keypad. It refused to turn. I pulled the key back out and looked closely at the locking mechanism. The brass cylinder was completely different from the one I had installed. I looked down and noticed fresh, tiny metallic shavings dusted across the welcome mat. The entire lock had been professionally drilled out and replaced within the last 24 hours. Before I could fully process the massive legal violation of someone changing the locks on my primary residence, the motion-activated porch light clicked to a brighter setting. A shadow moved across the frosted glass sidelight panel of my front door. I took a cautious step backward as the interior foyer lights blazed on. Standing right inside my house, protected by the heavy reinforced glass, were my brother and my sister-in-law. Trent was not wearing a bright orange county jail jumpsuit. He was dressed in a pristine dark charcoal athleisure set, holding a steaming mug of my expensive imported coffee. Our parents had moved with lightning speed, leveraging their massive wealth and high-priced defense attorneys to post what must have been an astronomical bail for an attempted manslaughter charge. They had prioritized getting their golden child out of a holding cell over checking if I could breathe on my own. Beside him stood Jada. She was no longer wearing the oversized tear-stained sweater from her viral extortion video. She wore a sleek designer jumpsuit, her hair perfectly smoothed back into a tight bun. She held her smartphone casually in one hand, the screen completely dark. She did not need to perform for an audience right now. The fake crying influencer mask was completely off, revealing the greedy, calculating opportunist underneath. I stared at them through the glass, the freezing rain soaking right through my thin hospital scrubs. They had broken into my house. They had invaded my only safe haven. I stepped forward and pounded my fist against the heavy door, ignoring the sharp flare of pain radiating through my damaged knuckles. "Get out of my house!" I shouted, my voice hoarse but echoing loudly on the quiet residential street. "You are trespassing. I am calling the police right now." Trent did not flinch. He took a slow, arrogant sip from his coffee mug and smiled. It was a hollow, dead-eyed smile that sent a wave of absolute disgust churning through my stomach. He gestured casually for Jada to step forward. Jada walked right up to the glass. She did not bother to unlock or open the door. Instead, she knelt down near the heavy weather stripping at the base of the threshold. She pushed a thick, folded manila envelope through the narrow metal mail slot at the bottom of the door. It dropped onto my wet porch mat with a soft thud. I looked down at the envelope, then back up at their smug faces. I crouched down slowly, my bruised ribs screaming in protest, and picked up the heavy paper packet. My bandaged fingers tore the seal open. Inside were several pages of dense, highly structured legal documents printed on the heavy stock paper favored by elite corporate law firms. I scanned the bold black text at the top of the first page. Emergency petition for temporary conservatorship. Attached beneath it was a second equally terrifying legal filing. Temporary medical power of attorney. My analytical brain instantly decoded the devastating legal trap they had just sprung. They had weaponized my emergency trauma admission. They used the severe hypoxia, the hypothermia, and the completely fabricated narrative of my severe psychological breakdown to file an emergency ex parte petition in family court. They had leveraged Jada's viral video and my parents' immense financial resources to convince a judge that I was an active danger to myself. They were using the exact same legal framework designed to protect vulnerable patients as a weapon to strip me of my bodily autonomy and my financial independence. By establishing a temporary medical power of attorney and pending conservatorship, Trent now had the presumed legal authority to occupy my residence, access my bank accounts, and make binding decisions on my behalf. They were not just trying to steal the Aspen cabin anymore. They were actively executing a hostile takeover of my entire life. They desperately needed control of my tech company shares and my liquid assets to cover Trent's massive embezzlement debts before the federal authorities caught wind of his financial crimes. I looked up from the terrifying legal documents. The rain was freezing against my skin, but a new, unquenchable fire was burning intensely in my chest. I stepped right up to the glass, bringing my face mere inches from Jada. Jada leaned forward on the other side, her perfectly painted lips curling into a wicked, triumphant smile. Her voice carried clearly through the thick glass of the door laced with absolute malice. "You're legally unfit, Paige," Jada sneered through the glass. "We're taking control of your assets to help you recover." I stared at her perfectly contoured face, watching the sheer malicious joy radiating from her eyes. 5 years ago, the old me would have screamed until my vocal cords bled. I would have shattered that glass, begging for my own home, handing them the exact hysterical reaction they needed to prove their fabricated narrative to any passing police cruiser. Instead, I simply turned my back on them and walked away. The freezing rain battered my gray hospital scrubs as I marched down the driveway. I did not look back. I reached into the hidden lining of my bra, retrieving the emergency titanium encrypted flash drive and the thick fold of high-denomination bills I always kept vacuum-sealed for absolute worst-case scenarios. Working in cybersecurity and healthcare data teaches you to prepare for systemic collapse. Today, the collapsing system was my own family. I flagged down a passing city cab and handed the driver a crisp $100 bill, directing him to the Apex Grand. It was a fortress of a hotel catering strictly to visiting tech executives and foreign diplomats, boasting autonomous elevator protocols and highly restricted floor access. I paid for a week upfront in cash, under a corporate alias I maintained for security audits. The suite was vast, sterile, and perfectly silent. I locked the heavy deadbolt, engaged the secondary security latch, and stripped off the damp, coarse hospital scrubs. After a scalding hot shower that sent agonizing spikes of pain through my bruised ribs, I wrapped myself in a thick terry cloth robe. I sat down at the heavy mahogany desk, switched on the ambient desk lamp, and spread the damp legal documents across the polished wood. I needed to dissect their trap. The emergency petition for temporary conservatorship was a masterpiece of weaponized legal loopholes. My parents had spared absolutely no expense. They had retained a bulldog law firm known for aggressive corporate takeovers, effectively treating my life as a hostile acquisition. But the cornerstone of their entire petition rested on a single medical affidavit. I traced my injured finger down the page to the signature line. Dr. Silas Montgomery. A quick search on the hotel room tablet confirmed my suspicions. Montgomery was a high-priced, heavily sanctioned psychiatrist who catered exclusively to the ultra-wealthy. He functioned as a legal hitman in a white coat. He made a lucrative living rubber-stamping competency evaluations for rich families looking to quiet down inconvenient heirs or seize control of trust funds. Montgomery had signed a sworn statement declaring me a severe danger to myself, citing acute substance withdrawal and post-traumatic psychosis resulting from the blizzard. He had never even spoken to me. He diagnosed me entirely based on Jada's viral video and a heavily redacted forged hospital admission report my parents likely bribed a rogue administrator to produce. The American legal system has a terrifying blind spot when it comes to ex parte conservatorship hearings. A judge can temporarily strip away your fundamental civil liberties without you even being present in the courtroom, provided the medical affidavits look legitimate. Once you are locked in the system, escaping is a bureaucratic nightmare. You lose your right to hire your own attorney, access your own money, or even refuse forced medical treatments. My family was trying to legally bury me alive. The sheer audacity of the legal maneuvering was staggering, but my analytical mind zeroed in on the numbers. Why go to such extreme lengths? Why risk federal fraud charges to lock me in a conservatorship? I reviewed the asset schedule attached to the petition. Trent had listed himself as the primary fiduciary guardian. If a judge approved the final order next week, Trent would gain unilateral unchecked access to my corporate stock options, my real estate portfolio, and my offshore liquid capital. Trent was not just greedy. He was a desperate drowning animal, My brother was a vice president at a massive investment fund, living a lifestyle that vastly exceeded his legitimate compensation. Jada's influencer facade required a terrifying amount of overhead. Private jets, custom wardrobes, luxury leases all cost a fortune. I knew my brother's salary. It could not possibly support the millions they burned through annually. Trent was drowning in hidden debts, likely margin calls, or embezzled client funds that were about to come due. He needed a massive, untraceable cash injection immediately, and my grandmother's cabin had just been the appetizer. When I refused to sign over the Aspen property, he realized he needed the whole treasury. He left me to freeze to death so he could inherit it all. When the snowplow ruined his murder plot, my parents scrambled to execute Plan B. They would lock me in a psychiatric facility, declare me legally incompetent, and let Trent drain my accounts dry to save himself from federal prison. They chose to sacrifice my freedom and my sanity to protect their golden child from facing the consequences of his own financial crimes. They had cornered me in the physical world and the legal world. They had locked me out of my house, frozen my traditional bank accounts, and turned the public against me. But they fundamentally misunderstood the battlefield. They thought power resided in country club connections, viral social media tears, and forged legal signatures. They did not understand that true power in the modern age resides entirely in data. I reached into my bag and pulled out the encrypted titanium flash drive. I walked over to the high-end smart television mounted on the wall, bypassing the hotel network by booting up a secure, untraceable operating system directly from my drive. The screen flickered from the hotel welcome menu to a stark black command terminal. I bypassed the standard firewalls, establishing a secure tunnel directly to my company's hidden backup servers. My bruised, bandaged fingers hovered over the glass keyboard. I had spent my entire life trying to be the good daughter, trying to earn the love of parents who viewed me as nothing more than a spare parts depository for their golden child. That version of Paige froze to death on a porch in Aspen. The woman sitting in this hotel room was a highly trained data architect holding the digital keys to the global financial system. I opened my secure laptop. It was time to stop reacting and start hunting. I powered up my secure laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard despite the lingering ache from the cold. The sterile quiet of the hotel room was a stark contrast to the chaotic storm I had barely survived and the legal storm currently raging around me. But here in the digital realm, I was the one in control. My first target was Trent. I needed to understand the exact shape and scale of his desperation. He was a vice president at Vanguard Capital, a mid-sized but aggressive investment fund. His official salary, while substantial, could not possibly cover the exorbitant lifestyle Jada constantly flaunted on her social media channels. I started by pulling up Vanguard Capital's publicly available filings. I wrote a quick Python script to scrape their quarterly reports cross-referencing their declared assets under management with the specific portfolios Trent managed. The numbers were complex, intentionally obfuscated by layers of corporate jargon, but to me they were just data points waiting to be organized. I built a dynamic dashboard plotting Trent's portfolio performance over the past 5 years. The trend line was initially steady, but then about 18 months ago it became erratic. Sharp, inexplicable dips followed by sudden, aggressive recoveries. It looked less like strategic investing and more like high-stakes gambling. Next, I turned my attention to Jada's digital footprint. I didn't need to hack into her private accounts. She broadcasted her life to 500,000 followers daily. I used an image recognition API to scan her Instagram and TikTok feeds, cataloging every designer handbag, every first-class flight to Dubai or Paris, every piece of custom jewelry. I built a secondary dataset assigning estimated retail values to each item. The results were staggering. Jada's documented spending over the last 18 months exceeded Trent's entire estimated gross salary by a factor of 3. Even accounting for her influencer sponsorships, which I analyzed by tracking engagement metrics and standard industry conversion rates, the math simply did not work. They were burning through millions of dollars they did not legitimately possess. I needed to find the bridge between Trent's erratic portfolio performance and Jada's astronomical spending. I dove into the murky waters of shell companies and offshore accounts. I used specialized search protocols to scan public registries in Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming states, known for corporate anonymity. I searched for variations of Trent's name, Jada's maiden name, and even the names of their childhood pets. Hours bled into the night. The hotel room remained silent except for the rapid clicking of my keys. My eyes ached, but the thrill of the hunt kept me focused. I finally found a thread, a Delaware LLC named Aegis Holdings, registered just 2 weeks before the first major dip in Trent's portfolio performance. The registered agent was a notoriously shady law firm, but the digital breadcrumbs led me to a secondary filing in the Cayman Islands. I bypassed a weak firewall on a Cayman registry database, exploiting an outdated security protocol I had flagged in a vulnerability audit 3 years ago. The documents revealed that Aegis Holdings was a holding company for a series of offshore accounts. I ran a cross-referencing algorithm matching the dates of major withdrawals from Trent's client portfolios at Vanguard Capital with the dates of deposits into the Aegis Holdings accounts. The correlation was undeniable. The data points aligned perfectly, a digital fingerprint of massive financial fraud. Trent was not just making bad investments. He was actively skimming millions from his clients, funneling the money through Aegis Holdings and using it to fund Jada's influencer empire. The margin calls he had screamed about at the cabin were not market fluctuations. They were desperate attempts to cover the missing funds before the quarterly audits caught up with him. The sheer scale of the embezzlement was breathtaking. My brother was not just a greedy, desperate man. He was a master manipulator running a highly sophisticated Ponzi scheme, and he was willing to kill me to keep it hidden. I leaned back in the ergonomic hotel chair, staring at the glowing data models on my screen. The numbers painted a clear, irrefutable picture of absolute ruin for Trent and Jada. But I needed the final piece of the puzzle, the definitive proof that tied the stolen funds directly to their personal accounts. I ran one last query targeting the banking transactions linked to Jada's primary influencer, LLC. The progress bar crawled across the screen, the algorithm sifting through millions of data packets. My heart pounded a steady adrenaline-fueled rhythm against my bruised ribs. The query completed. The screen populated with a detailed transaction log. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning the rows of data. And there it was. A massive recurring wire transfer from an account linked directly to Aegis Holdings, deposited straight into Jada's primary business account. The memo line simply read, "Consulting fees." I had hit the jackpot. The discrepancy in the numbers was not just a rounding error, it was a $4.5 million gaping hole in Trent's client portfolios, a hole he had tried to fill with my inheritance and my life. The smoking gun was right there, glowing brightly on my screen, waiting to be unleashed. I stared at the transaction logs, the harsh blue light of the monitor reflecting in my tired eyes. $4.5 million. It was not a single panicked theft. It was a systematic, calculated draining of client assets executed over 18 months with terrifying precision. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I dug deeper into the architecture of his fraud. Trent was not just skimming off the top of his investment fund. He was identifying older, less active clients at Vanguard Capital, people who trusted him implicitly and rarely checked their digital portals. He siphoned their principal investments into Aegis Holdings under the guise of high-yield offshore ventures. From there, the money was washed clean through the Cayman Islands and wired directly into Jada's influencer enterprise. Jada was not just a clueless beneficiary of her husband's crimes. She was the primary launderer. Her lifestyle brand was the perfect front. By claiming the stolen millions as consulting fees and brand sponsorships, she integrated the dirty money into the legitimate banking system. Every designer bag she flaunted, every luxury vacation she vlogged, and every high-end dinner she posted was actively funded by the retirement savings of Trent's unsuspecting clients. They were a modern-day criminal syndicate operating behind the glossy filter of social media perfection. But financial fraud of this magnitude creates an inevitable ticking clock. I pulled up Vanguard Capital's corporate calendar. There it was. The annual mandatory third-party audits were scheduled to begin this upcoming Monday morning. The entire timeline clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The margin calls Trent screamed about at the cabin were not related to market volatility. He was facing a massive, unavoidable audit that would instantly expose the missing $4.5 million. He needed an immediate massive influx of clean cash to replace the stolen funds before the auditors arrived. That was why he needed our grandmother's cabin. He needed a hard, unencumbered asset worth millions to secure a rapid bridge loan from a private lender. When I refused to sign the deed over to him on that freezing porch, I did not just deny him money. I essentially handed him a federal prison sentence. The realization sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. Trent stepping over my convulsing body in the snow was not a moment of panic. It was a cold, calculated pivot in his criminal strategy. If I died in the blizzard, he would automatically inherit my entire estate, including my tech company shares and my half of the cabin. My death was the ultimate financial bailout for his embezzlement scheme. He was willing to let his own sister suffocate and freeze to death to keep his white-collar crimes hidden from the auditors. And my parents were actively aiding him. By filing the emergency conservatorship to declare me mentally unfit, they were attempting to seize my assets to save him perfectly, willing to sacrifice my freedom and my sanity to protect their golden child. I leaned back in the ergonomic hotel chair, my bruised ribs aching in protest. The sheer magnitude of their betrayal was staggering, but I could not afford the luxury of emotional devastation. I needed to weaponize this data. I opened a new, highly encrypted folder on my secure desktop and began compiling the digital dossier. I did not just save the raw data. I organized